Welcome to Gazelle's QuickBooks Online Integration tutorial. In this video, we'll cover what is the Gazelle QuickBooks Online Integration, what it does, and what it doesn't do. We'll also cover how to get it set up and how to manage it on a daily or weekly basis. Like all of our features, we've got a lot of help documentation at help.gazelleapp.io, and you can access that by clicking on the help icon in the app and by navigating to the Help Center. From there, you can search for your question or scroll down to the accounting integrations to find answers related to setting up or other questions you might encounter. If you can't find it there, just drop us a message using the same help icon or email us at support@gazelleapp.io. Now, the Gazelle QuickBooks Online Integration is only available in select countries. If you find that this feature is not enabled for your country and you'd like to see it, feel free to let us know using the email I just mentioned. The Gazelle QuickBooks Online Integration streamlines the data transfer between your invoicing in Gazelle and your bookkeeping in QuickBooks. If you also have the Stripe payment processing enabled, then the integration makes it easy to connect Stripe payouts with Gazelle invoices by automating the associations. When it comes to accounting while using Gazelle QuickBooks integration, think of there as being 3 to 4 different systems, all working together to give you the most accurate information about the financial health of your business. Gazelle is the authority on your invoices, and your bank is the authority on your cash. And Stripe is the authority on credit card payments processed by them, if you have enabled that feature. All 3 of these systems inform your 4th system, your accounting system, in this case, QuickBooks, which documents it all and aligns your invoices, your payments, your expenses, and your bank account to fully relate to each other in a coherent way. The actual act of lining all of those up or reconciling them is often called balancing your books, or your accountant might call it reconciliation. Now, it's worth noting that this integration does not automate your bookkeeping. That process, the act of balancing your books, it still requires some manual effort from either you as the business owner or your accountant, and sometimes both. You'll still need to make deposits to your bank for manual payment methods like checks or cash, or even enter credit cards not processed by Stripe. You'll also need to enter non-Gazelle data into your books. But Gazelle's QuickBooks Online Integration makes your life a little easier by cutting down on time spent entering data or relating certain invoice transactions. And ultimately, you won't have to track down errors caused by manual entry. All right, let's get started. To enable this feature, go to Settings and click on the Accounting tab, or start a trial from the billing page. So we're going to add the QuickBooks integration, and after you've enabled the feature, you're going to need to connect your Gazelle account to your QuickBooks account. So we're going to do that by clicking on the Connect Now button. And then we're going to need to log in to our QuickBooks account. In this case, I've already logged in, and since I'm using a sandbox company, I'll just choose my sandbox and click Next. From here, we're going to complete our setup. Now, I want to give a note. You can do all the settings you see here from the web app or the mobile app. Now, once you've enabled the feature, you'll need to make some decisions to set your configuration. So the first is the mapping of the QuickBooks accounts. So this whole section will only appear if you have Stripe payments enabled on your Gazelle account. Now, you'll need to match each of these accounts inside Gazelle to your QuickBooks accounts. So the first is the Stripe payouts deposit. The Gazelle simply needs to know what account in QuickBooks your Stripe payouts are depositing to. So we're going to click on that, and I'm going to say my Stripe payouts will go to our checking account. Now, the second thing you need is a clearing account. A clearing account is a way to keep your main books from getting messy. So accounts use it to track any pass-through transactions or deposits waiting for a transaction to account for it. Usually this will be a zero-based account. Most accountants try to get this back to zero by the end of the month. Stripe needs this to make sure that their accounting works, so you need to have one. If you don't have one, and in this case I don't, I'm going to have to go to QuickBooks and add to the chart of accounts. So to get there, I'm going to go Transactions and to my chart of accounts. Here I am in my chart of accounts, and I'm going to click New, and I'm going to make a new account called a clearing account. Account type is just going to be my bank, and it'll just be another checking. And ultimately, this account doesn't really exist. It is entirely fictional, but it's a place to hold money and hold transactions until they can be put somewhere else. Again, this is accountant magic. So again, checking, we're going to save it. And there's my clearing account. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to go to my clearing account, cancel that. I'm going to reauthorize QuickBooks to remind it to pull down all of my accounts appropriately. And now, once it loads up, I'm going to do that checking. And now I'm going to add my clearing account and save. So next is payment processing fees. This is probably a merchant fee account or a processing fee account in QuickBooks, but this is where your payment processing fees for Stripe are going to go. So in this case, I'm going to just search for fees, and I'm going to use it as professional fees. Click Save. And then undeposited funds. So undeposited funds is where you're going to send funds that have not been deposited. Just map that to the same, undeposited funds. Save. So after you're done mapping your accounts, you'll also need to map your taxes. Gazelle taxes map to QuickBooks custom rate taxes. So you'll need to create custom rate taxes inside QuickBooks to match the ones you have in Gazelle. So to do that, we go again to our QuickBooks, go to Taxes, and here we have our tax list. I can add or edit tax rates over to the side here. I'm going to click on that, and now I can add custom rates. So I'm going to go back to Gazelle. Again, I have my Union County tax, and I'm going to line that up with the Union County tax I have in QuickBooks. So I'm going to quickly do this for all of the accounts we have, for all the taxes we have. So one thing to note is that you'll also, one thing to note is that you'll also have to create combined taxes. I'll show you just how to do that in just one moment. Okay. And the North Carolina tax. So a combined tax is anywhere where you would have an invoice that would have both a North Carolina tax and a county tax, or a state tax and a county tax. So for each of these, I would have a state tax and a county tax. And if I'm ever going to see a combination of taxes on one invoice, then I have to have a matching combination inside QuickBooks. I'm not mapping to that, but I do need to have that inside Gazelle. So, or inside QuickBooks. So I'm going to go to QuickBooks, and you can see I have my 4 that I connected to, Union County, North Carolina, both my state and my county taxes. But then I have to have combined taxes, which combine those rates. So I have both the state and one for each county. So if you're in Canada, you'll also be required to have a 0% tax. That'll also be listed right here under Mapping QuickBooks. That 0% tax is something we've created by default for you so that you don't need to apply a 0% tax on all of your service items. But this will need to be mapped to a custom rate inside QuickBooks. When you enable the QuickBooks Gazelle integration, you'll notice under your Invoices tab that there's now a new icon on the left of the status of each invoice, indicating whether or not this invoice has been synced successfully to QuickBooks. So here I've got this invoice will never sync because it's before a certain date. And here I have an item that has not been synced yet. Now, we'll set that date in just a moment when we look at the settings again. So you'll also notice that there's now a QuickBooks Sync button at the top of the invoice list to make it easy to sync your invoices. Additionally, if I click on an invoice, I can also have the opportunity to sync with QuickBooks directly from the invoice. When you sync to QuickBooks, Gazelle is going to find all the invoices that have not been synced or that have been updated since it was last synced, and it's going to push all those changes to QuickBooks. You can sync specific invoices one by one, which will only update that specific invoice, similar to what we see here, clicking on this ability to sync with invoice. Or you can bulk sync all the invoices, which will affect any invoices that have had any data changes in either Gazelle or QuickBooks. And if you bulk sync, you'll be given a choice. You'll be allowed to choose if you want to include Stripe payouts or payments from QuickBooks. So if you have Stripe payments enabled on your account, Gazelle will actually pull all the payouts from Stripe along with the card processing fees. And we're going to relate that to transactions in QuickBooks so that you're no longer having to manually account for the card processing fees. Gazelle can also pull from QuickBooks any payments that have been entered into QuickBooks that have not been synced back to Gazelle. Here. So, for instance, let's say that a couple of weeks from now, the customer calls, and instead of entering the payment in Gazelle, it's marked paid in QuickBooks and only in QuickBooks. Well, if you choose this option, then Gazelle will look for any payments that were applied to an invoice in QuickBooks and will pull that payment to Gazelle. This will update the invoice from unpaid to paid. I will say that if you manually enter a payment in QuickBooks and in Gazelle, there's now two payments for one invoice, and you're going to get an error. So as a general practice, enter your payments into Gazelle and then sync those to QuickBooks. I mentioned before that there were some defaults to set in the settings, so let's go back to that. Go to Settings, again to our accounting, and let's talk about these settings here. So first is the start sync date. When you sync, the system will attempt to sync anything that's dated after that date. So if you already have your books up to date to a specific date, but you haven't yet input any invoices from Gazelle to QuickBooks after that date, then you might want to set this back a day and then go ahead and sync. Otherwise, you can just let it be today or whatever day you start integrating with QuickBooks. We're going to leave this as today. The second setting is for use when you're using QuickBooks classes. If you have multiple technicians and want to track revenue by technician. This will be shaded out if you don't have classes enabled in QuickBooks. And the last three settings are specific to default settings for when you do a bulk sync. If you have these set up as default, they'll already be checked, but you can always deselect as needed. So the third one is the including Stripe payouts by default. Then the next one is how you handle a payment that's been added to QuickBooks but not in Gazelle. And then finally, the last one is whether or not you want to pull any payments from QuickBooks to Gazelle by default. One last common event that occurs when you first starting your integration is the possibility that you'll create duplicate clients. So let's do a sync here. We're going to sync. We're going to include our draft invoice as well. You know what? Let's instead make that draft invoice into an open invoice. We're going to go back to our invoices. I have two invoices that have not been synced. So we're going to sync those invoices. So I'm going to include Stripe payouts. I'm going to include payments from QuickBooks. I don't expect there to be either of those, but I'll send them both. And we're going to sync now. Both of these invoices are sent over to QuickBooks. And meanwhile, we're going to check QuickBooks to see if there's anything else that needs to be updated back to us. While that's initializing, it'll start getting ready to send the sync over. And it's syncing the two invoices I have marked. Now, as it's doing that, it will either connect to clients that are already in QuickBooks, or it'll create new clients in QuickBooks. So in this case, two invoices were successfully pushed to QuickBooks. There were no Stripe payouts that would need to be pushed to QuickBooks, and no QuickBooks payments need to be pulled into Gazelle. Great. Now, since this is my first time using this sync, it's worth noting that if you have records already in QuickBooks previous to syncing with Gazelle, then you're likely going to create some duplicated clients. This is unavoidable and it's easy to address. So after that very first sync, Gazelle will not create duplicate records in QuickBook, but after the first sync, it's worth checking. So for instance, if I've already created an account, already created a client record in QuickBooks for a client, let's see, I'm going to go to my customers and leads, and I have all my clients listed. So in this case, I'm going to check for Walsh. If I've already created a customer record in QuickBooks for a client and I sync an invoice for that client from Gazelle for the very first time, this is going to create a second duplicate record. So in QuickBooks, you can't have customers with the exact same name. So QuickBooks will add an asterisk to the end of the name of the incoming Gazelle client. So you can merge these two clients really easily by searching for the customer you want to merge. And here I see both of the customers, one with the asterisk and one without, right? Then I click on the customer without the asterisk, and I'm going to click Edit. So here we have Priscilla Walsh. I'm going to click Edit, Priscilla Walsh. And all I have to do is I'm going to add on the customer display name the asterisk again. And then we click Save. So I've added in the display name as the field, I've added the asterisk to the end of the name. When I save, QuickBooks will ask if I want to merge these two records. So that name's already being used. Would you like to merge the two? Yes, I would. Now, when I save that, if I choose yes, the clients are now merged. And don't worry about removing the asterisk. I'm going to go back to customers and leads. Let's look that up again. And enter. And now I only have one Priscilla Walsh. It still has the asterisk, but I don't need to worry about removing that asterisk because this will be removed automatically the next time we sync. Because now this client is connected to the client in Gazelle. And when those customers, anytime we sync, it'll check for any changes and it'll see that there's no asterisk actually on that name. So I now have another invoice for Priscilla that has been paid. So again, I'm going to go back to my invoices. And I could just do that one. So instead of doing the bulk, I'm going to take that invoice that I was on. I'm going to click on the Sync with QuickBooks. And I'm just going to quickly sync that. And this time, I'm only syncing one invoice, not all the invoices that need to be synced. This also means that I'm only going to be checking for Stripe payouts for this one invoice. No problems there. I go back to those customers. Let's go back to my customer leads. I'm going to search for that Walsh name. And there they are, Priscilla Walsh with no asterisk because it's been updated due to the sync. Well, that's a complete review of the feature and the settings needed to make it work for you. All right, so if you have any questions, again, you can check that Help Center or you can always reach out to our team. We look forward to supporting you and your business with this new feature. Welcome to Gazelle Quickbooks Online Integration.